So how would you describe being in the zone, Steve? I mean, really what happens when you start, all of a sudden you're beginning of the day and you've got the pencil in your hand or you're at your tube and
Yeah.
things just start to click, what happens?
Well, you use the phrase being in the zone. I think that's great because you really do get in the zone. And it starts when you're in school, but then even after school, as you're practicing, you get in this zone where you're starting to, you've got an idea and you're starting to sketch the idea and you're starting to build small models of the idea and you're working on the computer and you're maybe just trying to figure out what this thing is going to be and then how you're going to illustrate this idea to somebody. And literally, 4, 5, 6, 8 hours can fly by and you're so engrossed in what you're doing because architecture, you're using both sides of your brain, and so everything's sort of firing all at once, and you're using all of your skills to be able to produce this creation, this design that you're doing. And I remember when I got my first job in architecture, and I was sitting sketching something out, and I just remember sitting back thinking, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this. I love this.
Even better.
I'm building models and I'm coloring, and it's almost like I'm back in kindergarten, and yet I'm making a good salary.
Yeah,
So,
and building something that people will be walking through, living
That's
in,
right.
working in, and
doing what you love to do and getting paid for it. I mean, there's really no, there's no greater gratification than that.
oh, wonderful. Now we had another video series we did with Mike Cooper from Harley Ellis Devereaux, which I really enjoyed doing, and I thought was a really nice package for someone to learn building information modeling. You folks don't really use that much here, and when we were talking earlier, even before my coming here, you mentioned that there are other programs that people can learn to even
Right.
pick up prior to building information modeling. And you use those kinds of things here as well?
We sure do. But building information modeling, or BIM is the acronym is known, tends to be very technically oriented. So for instance, to build a usable BIM model, what you're essentially doing is you're building a building, only you're building it virtually. It's within the computer. So what that means is, instead of just drawing a picture of a building like we might have here, where this is a sort of a rendition of what a building might look like, this is really a dumb model. This is not a BIM model by any stretch, because essentially this is, you could call it an artist's rendering,
right.
An artist's rendition. A BIM model has codified within it all of, or many of the engineering decisions that have to be made in order to build that model. So for instance, what kind of lighting is being used, and what kind of piping is above the ceilings, and what kind of ductwork and structural systems. And so BIM modeling tends to be much more technically oriented, whereas
which is still good, though. I mean,
which is
it's
very
still important,
valuable,
yeah.
Important
We're
and
not
very
talking down
valuable.
about it.
And frankly, it is the future of what we do as architects.
Right.
More and more, our practice is moving towards the use of BIM technologies. And while we haven't done a full BIM project here yet, we've done projects where we've done partial BIM, and we're looking for our first one. Part of it is because it is so sort of technically intensive, there's a greater fee associated with it because it takes a lot more time. And so to find a client that really has a use for a full BIM model is a little bit more, they're a little fewer and further between than, say, a traditional client that they just really want the building built. They don't necessarily need a virtual model of the building. But there are some clients, particularly health systems and that sort of thing, where they've got a lot of mechanical electrical systems within the building that they want to be able to monitor over the long term on their computer. And that BIM model can actually help them monitor the systems within their buildings. Those kinds of clients really need the BIM software. What we use here is other softwares that can sketch what a building might look like, or what a space might look like, the interior of a space, and yet they don't necessarily have all those technical questions answered at that point.
And one of those typical programs would be, what was it, did you mention earlier?
SketchUp is
SketchUp.
is actually free. It's owned by Google. They bought SketchUp several years ago, and they offer a free version of it online. You can download and
Good.
just start. You can just start playing with it. They've got great tutorials. I would encourage anybody that's interested in architecture to at least take a look at that because there's very little cost associated with it. If you've got a computer, you can use SketchUp.
Yeah. Okay, well, in closing, a couple of the professions that I've heard about that I would tend to associate with drawing and perspective drawing would be an architect, like yourself, urban planner. Can you think of any other types that might go out there to our viewers and they go, yeah, I could probably do that?
Well, there's also, along with architecture, is landscape architecture. And so, in fact, landscape architects, just like architects, will sketch their ideas out and present them to clients. And but they also have the added component of being able to work outside and work with plant materials. And so that's a great profession. You mentioned urban design. I will mention one other profession that sometimes falls between the cracks, and that is exhibit design and display design. So you go to the auto show, for instance. Some of these exhibits are larger than buildings that we design, and they're literally buildings within buildings. And so there are people that are working to design those exhibits, and they're all over the world, and they're not just auto shows. There's all sorts of trade shows that use these fantastic exhibits. So it's sort of an industrial design kind of crossover between industrial design and architecture.
But the jobs are out there.
But there are jobs out there, and that's good to know these days.
Well, one of the things we try and do, and I'm not trying to ambush you here or anything, but and you've been very good to discuss architecture. These are good careers. We want to really get these kids drawing and thinking about a good solid future as opposed to just filling sketchbooks with pictures of cars and superheroes. So the time we've spent here I think has been very informative for them, and I look forward to hearing back from anybody that wants to comment about what we did. But thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It was really nice to talk to you. And
if I could say one last thing, I just want to
please
put a plug in for architecture because it's a passion, and I love what I do. So if that's an encouragement to any of those of you that are watching, it's a noble and a good profession. So and it's very fulfilling.
Oh, excellent. Well, nice way to close it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks a lot, Ray.